That printer right there is a Ricoh Ri1000 DTG printer. It costs about $17,500, more or less. And it is the worst investment that I have made into my business.
I am never going to financially recover from this.
Yeah, it sucks to admit, it sucks to have to say it, but I wasted money on a DTG printer and I totally regret getting it. I should have gone with something else. I'll go into that a little bit later on. So let's just go ahead and start from the beginning. So I always wanted a way to be able to print t-shirts in full color and have good quality and have them last a long time. Because of course, as a business owner and a t-shirt printer, I want to be able to offer good products. I want to offer quality products that are going to last. So originally I started with a white toner printer, which ironically enough is actually used more than the DTG printer now, but beside the point. So originally I did start with a white toner printer and I was making t-shirts with it. I was using it to be able to do full color prints, but it wasn't big enough. And on top of that, while the quality wasn't bad, you know, white toner printers, they don't last as long as I would like them to, but the quality isn't necessarily the worst. For something like one-off orders like I get from Etsy or birthday shirts, you know, things along those lines, it's perfect because those are shirts that people aren't necessarily going to keep using over and over. And if they do, it's not really to go out or to impress anybody or, you know, anything like that. It's just a regular t-shirt. Although the white toner printer does have a lot more uses, it's pretty useful. You can print a lot of different types of items on there. And the fact that it prints the color white makes it 10 times better. When it comes to t-shirts, it can get the job done, but of course it's not the best. And I like printing large prints, and the printer that I have, the iColor 560, that one only prints A4 or A4 legal. So it's not that big.
That's what she said.
So whenever I did have to do an oversized print, I would have to print 2 different sheets and put them together and then press them separately. So I went ahead and started looking around for a DTG printer. And the reason I decided to go with a DTG printer was, for one, you can print directly on the shirt. 2, when it comes to printing, you can print a bit of a wider variety or a bit more detailed. What I mean is, whether it be DTF, white toner, vinyl, screen print transfers, whatever it may be, you can't print shadows. So if you see an image where at the end it starts to fade into nothingness, you can't do that. You can't fade your print. The only method that can do that is DTG and sublimation. So that's one reason why I decided to go with the DTG, because it had the ability to do that. Now, that's something personal. I really didn't think about it as a business or through a business standpoint, because realistically speaking, a lot of people and a lot of my customers or a lot of people that purchase my shirts on Etsy, they don't care. So that right there was one lesson that I learned. When it comes to business and investing into different equipment or into new equipment, while it is good to like what you're doing and put in your personal opinion and your professional opinion, don't get too personal. Make sure it's something that everyone likes and everyone wants, versus just what you like or what you want. Because if you just think of things that you like, then you end up making personal decisions rather than professional decisions. And that's not good. So beside that, another reason why I ended up going with it is because you could also print DTF transfers. Now, the whole reason I wanted to print DTF transfers was so I could sell them. Prior to the DTG printer, I had actually purchased a DTF printer from China. And that was a total fail. Another really bad investment. So long story short, I started looking around. I started trying to find which DTG printer was best, which one was more affordable, and which one would work best for me. And lo and behold, I came across the Ricoh Ri1000. Prior to making the purchase, I did do some research and I read mixed reviews, and I decided based off of what I've read, it looks like a good decision for me. So I ended up making the purchase. I contacted Ricoh at the time, which was the one that was selling them. And for those of you that don't know, Ricoh used to sell the Ricoh Ri1000, but they no longer do. So a lot of the people that purchased the printers from Ricoh, from my understanding at the beginning, had a lot of problems transitioning to Ricoh. Because Ricoh is the manufacturer, but since it was purchased through Ricoh, it was this huge mess and everyone was just complaining about it. And honestly, I don't entirely know what happened because I personally have never had any issues with the printer. It's actually been a really good printer. The quality to me could be a little bit better just because I feel like some of the colors are a bit dull. So like, let's say reds. Reds aren't very bright. They're not very strong, which to me is a bummer because with such an expensive machine, you would expect to have some really bright colors. But since it prints in CMYK, you actually need to save the file as a CMYK and then run it through the software so that way you can convert it to the file that's able to be used with the DTG printer. Now, throughout that whole process, the colors get dull. If you just go in Photoshop with a regular RGB image and then you change it over to CMYK, you'll immediately see a drop in vibrancy. Is that a word? Vibrancy? I think it is. The image just won't be as vibrant. The colors are going to get more dull. And that transfers over to when you actually print it. Now, what trips me out is the fact that a Sawgrass SG1000, which is a sublimation printer that I have, it also prints in CMYK, but it doesn't have that issue. Sublimation has some extremely vibrant colors. I mean, it might be because of the heat. I don't really know, but I don't know. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. But aside from that, I really never had any issues with the printer. The print heads actually clogged on me once, but that was because I ended up going on vacation and I didn't do the proper maintenance prior, and when I got back they were a little bit clogged. But unclogging it was actually pretty easy. So honestly, I never had any issues with the printer. Anything that I ended up doing to it as troubleshooting, I just found off YouTube or off of some help groups on Facebook. The community behind the Ricoh Ri1000 is actually very helpful. There's a very helpful community out there that can help you out with almost any issues that you have. So the quality of the printer itself wasn't bad. I never had any issues with it. I printed all the time with it. I actually used it. But then, why was it the worst investment I've ever made? Well, simply put, if you don't use the printer, you're gonna waste money. If that printer is not used, it will be costing you money. And the reason for that is because it cycles the ink consistently on a daily basis, multiple times a day. Specifically, the white ink. So when it comes to the DTG printers, I'm pretty sure everyone knows, but for those of you that don't, DTG printers use 5 different ink cartridges. So they use CMYK, the typical cyan, magenta, yellow, black, plus W, or plus white. Now, from all of those different inks, they all cost the same, $61. But the white ends up being a lot more expensive, maybe 3 or 4 times as expensive. So each standard ink cartridge costs $61. So you would assume that if you have to replace all 5 of them, it would cost you about $305 plus taxes and shipping, which it's at $300. They should give you free shipping. But let's assume $305, right? Wrong. So the kicker here is the fact that this printer here actually uses 2 white ink cartridges. It uses the white 1 and the white 2, and it still runs out 3 or 4 times faster than the rest of the inks. That's why the white ink is a lot more expensive than the rest. Now, on the printhead itself, the white ink is also the one that's most susceptible to clogging, and that is where everyone starts to have their problems. When the white ink gets clogged, if you leave it on there for too long and it gets really dry, it could potentially damage the printhead itself, making you have to replace the printhead, and warranty will not cover that. So in order to automatically prevent the printheads from clogging, Ricoh has a system that automatically cycles the white ink. It cycles all of the other inks as well, but it cycles the white ink a lot more than it does the other inks. The white ink specifically is the troublemaker here, because the white ink is the one that's always more susceptible to clogging. It's the one that's more susceptible to drying up. So because of that, regular maintenance needs to be done to the printheads as well. And that's another thing that I suck at. I don't like having to do maintenance on machines if it's every single day. You know, if it's maybe once a month, once a week even, fine. If I have to do it, I'll do it. But I don't like doing that. I like having machines or printers or my equipment. I like having things that just work. That's why I ended up getting rid of my converted Sublimation printer, because the maintenance just got to be too much. I decided to go with a Sawgrass SG1000, and there's no maintenance that I need to do. Whenever I need to print, whether it be in a week, in a month, 2 months, if I don't use it, I just hit print and it works. That's what I like. That's what I want. That's my personal preference. Some people, they don't mind doing the daily maintenance. Me, I hate it. I hate doing daily maintenance. So because of the ink cycling, what it ends up doing is it just ends up throwing away a bunch of ink. And that's what the ink cycling does. It just runs ink through the print heads and it throws it into the waste container, and it's just garbage at that point. It's wasted. Now, a few things that I noticed about the printer when I was using it is even if you use the printer throughout the day, it'll still do those cycles, which to me was kind of weird because ink is flowing through. So wouldn't you think that the timer for the cycle would reset maybe? I mean, that's just what I think. It's already laying down white, so why do the cycle right after? There were a lot of times where I would have to stop my printing because as soon as the shirt finished, it would start doing the maintenance and cycling the ink. And I was like, that's such a waste. Why is it doing that? But aside from that, like I said, all day, every day, maybe I would say maybe every hour, every 2 hours, something like that, the printer would start up, you would hear the fan start, and then you would hear the printhead start moving, and then you would hear the ink start cycling. Now, if you have a consistent flow of orders, then you can probably cover that, but if you don't, then you're wasting money. And it got to a point where I was wasting money with it because there were some days, sometimes some weeks, where I really wouldn't put much effort into my marketing and I wouldn't have any orders. At one point, I kid you not, I went about a month without having any t-shirt orders just because I was focused on way too many other things, and I ran out of white ink. And the problem is that you can't just leave it empty. You need to replace that white ink, otherwise the ink that's left in there will dry out in your print heads and start causing more problems. Now, aside from that, for some reason, I don't know if it's just me or if it happened to everybody else, If you have an Ri1000, let me know down in the comments below if this happens to you or happens to you. A lot of the times I would see that my magenta would be at 50 or maybe 40 or 50% ink level. And then the very next day, it would drop down to like literally 0. There would be nothing in there. Like, what the hell? It was so weird. And it was only with the magenta. The levels would be pretty consistent. I would think, oh, maybe I have another week or two before I have to replace it. And then from one day to the other, it's totally gone. Where did my magenta go? Where did my ink go? It was such a waste of money because more than a couple of times, it would make me run online and order an emergency pair of ink. Sometimes I would even have to expedite them. But aside from that, the prep time and the printing time, it adds up, especially for a DTG printer. So for those of you that don't know, when you print on a shirt, specifically a cotton shirt, because, by the way, I forgot to mention this, you can't print on polyester. If you want to print on polyester, you have to print it as DTF first and then press it. But for pressing regular cotton shirts, you have to pre-treat your shirt. And at first, it wasn't that bad. But after doing a few orders of 20 or 30 shirts, it gets annoying. And if you don't have the space to be able to hang that many shirts, to just let them air dry, then you're gonna have a problem. Or it's just gonna take you a lot longer. Because after you pre-treat a shirt, you have to hang it to dry. You can put it under the heat press and press it down and dry your shirt that way. But that's just gonna take a lot of time in front of the heat press, especially if you have 20 or 30 shirts. In that case, it's better to just do it the night before, hang the shirts, and get to pressing the next day. But right there, you can see the time that you're already starting to use. So you have to pre-treat the night before, or if you have an emergency shirt, pre-treat your shirt, put it under the heat press, dry it. That usually takes about 5 minutes maybe, because you're gonna have to press it multiple times so that way the shirt doesn't scorch or burn. So then after that, you have to pop it into the DTG printer and actually start to print. Now the print itself takes maybe 2 or 3 minutes, give or take, something along those lines. But then you have to pop it into the heat press and cure the ink. Now, when you cure the ink, you have to press it 3 times, at least for black shirts or dark colored shirts. For white shirts, you only have to do it once because it lays down less ink. So with a dark colored shirt, what it's gonna do is it's gonna lay down the white ink and then it's gonna lay down the color ink. If you're printing on a white shirt, it's not gonna lay down the white ink, which, by the way, it's actually cheaper to print a white shirt because of that. So when you're printing with a white underbase, me personally, I like oversized prints. So each one of my prints was costing me, I would say about $2 to $4, depending on the print. When it comes to printing on a white shirt, that's literally going to cost you cents. That's not even going to cost you $1. So printing time for t-shirts was a bit longer than I actually wanted it to be. It's not horrible, it's not the worst. And you have the ability to print just one full color shirt with an unlimited amount of colors with pretty good detail and some pretty good colors. Because I'm not going to lie, while the colors on the shirts weren't that vibrant, it still worked. It got the job done. Now I did mention that I also purchased this machine so I could print DTF transfers to sell. And at first that was okay, but the process itself as well got pretty time consuming, and quite frankly, I think it started to get a bit hazardous. So I myself actually have asthma. So when it comes to printing DTF transfers, after you lay down the ink on the sheet, you have to put powder on it, and then you have to melt that powder onto the ink or onto the design. Now, if you want a full tutorial on that and you want to see exactly how it's done, you can watch this video right here, and it's also going to be down in the description below. Now, throughout that process, it releases fumes, and those fumes are disgusting. Every single time that I printed DTF transfers, I would open up my windows. On top of that, I would put the AC at full blast to try to circulate all of the air, and the inside of my office, or this room right here, would still smell. Whenever I did this, I would make sure that there was nobody in the house. I did not want my kid in here, and I did not want my wife, who was pregnant at the time, to be inhaling these fumes either. Now, every single time I did do the transfers, I would wear a mask. And I started to get headaches. I started to feel weird. My breathing wasn't always the best after that. Sometimes I would wake up with a little bit of a cough, or sometimes I would feel the need to reach for my inhaler. And the smell actually kind of stuck around for a little bit, even though I had windows open. So it's safe to say that that ended pretty quick. I really didn't continue with DTF transfers for too long. I would say maybe a couple of months at most. Now, what should I have done differently? In my opinion, I feel like I should have ended up going with a different printer or something like a print and cut machine. Up until this point, my one thought was I should have gotten a Roland BN20 instead of the DTG printer. At this point where I'm at right now, honestly, I wouldn't get either, just because I use transfers a lot. Instead of printing, I've gotten to the point where I pretty much just use transfers. I've learned how I work, I've learned how everything works for me, and I've learned what works best for me. If I have somebody that wants a one color shirt, I'll just bust out the vinyl cutter. It's no big deal. If I have an order of multiple or a bulk order of single color shirts, then I'm going to be ordering transfers. Seriously, using transfers is so much cheaper and so much quicker than using vinyl or using a DTG printer or printing your own transfers. Honestly, at first I was always stuck in my old ways of I'm doing all the work myself, but when I really started to look into it and started running some numbers, I realized transfers are totally worth it, especially for the amount of time that you actually spend pressing. Personally, I use TKO transfers, and to this day, those have been the ones that have lasted the longest in the wash and have had the most superior quality out of all of the different transfers that I've tried. Their single color transfers are only 15 cents each. Of course, you need to pay a setup fee, but at the end of the day, it adds up to be cheaper with screen print transfers. Now, if I have somebody that wants just one full color shirt, if it's a light shirt, most likely I'll end up doing a polyester shirt and sublimating it. But if they want a black shirt, then I have the white toner printer. A lot of the times when people ask for one shirt, it's not going to be anything crazy or anything crazy important. Most of the times, those shirts are used once, twice, a few different times, and that's about it. Now, if somebody wants work shirts, then again, I hit up TKO and I order some transfers, whether that be single color transfers or full color transfers. So as you can see, these are my more optimal ways of doing things. This is how I run my business, and this is what works best for me. Now, do I still wish that I had gotten the Roland BN20 instead of the Ricoh DTG printer? Yeah, I do. Primarily because, for one, it's a lot easier to move around. This thing is 400 pounds, so carrying this or taking this out of my office is going to be a huge headache. Now, right now, it's actually off. You can't really see the screen or anything, but right now it's actually off. I ended up taking out all the ink and I put the cleaners in there. And what the cleaners are is pretty much just the same cartridges, except instead of filled with ink, they're filled with a cleaning solution. What this is supposed to do is it's supposed to flush out all of the ink through the lines and through the print heads, and it's supposed to keep the water or the solution in there and keep everything hydrated so nothing dries out. Again, if I have one-offs, I'll use either my white toner printer or my vinyl cutter, and if I have larger orders, I'll just order transfers from TKO Transfers. I really have no need for the DTG printer anymore. And that is why this printer purchase was my biggest regret for my business, my t-shirt business. So if you're still watching, I'm pretty sure that you enjoyed this video. Do me a favor, make sure you like it. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you're not subscribed just yet. And help me pay this printer off. Please share this video. No, but in all seriousness, I do want everybody to know when it comes to this printer or such a big investment, such a big printer for your business, make sure that you're okay with every aspect of it. Don't just think about the short term, think about the long term. Make sure you're okay with doing all of the maintenance, and make sure you're okay with the fact that it does its own maintenance by cycling the ink. Remember, that is going to ultimately be money that is being wasted, especially if you're not running the machine. If you're not using it and you're not getting any sales, if it keeps doing that maintenance, you're going to be losing money. Just keep that in mind. As bad as it is, I'm not the only person that this has happened to. I'm probably one of the only people that has actually documented it. But I know a lot of people that have their DTG printer, or I've read a lot of posts on these different Facebook groups that I'm on about this particular printer, about DTG printers in particular, that say their printer is just collecting dust at this point. Not too many people are using it, and there is not much of a second-hand market for these printers. A lot of people are not buying these used. Think long and hard before actually making one of these large purchases. Now, this doesn't just apply to this DTG printer. This applies to any large purchase. So I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know if I want to sell it at a cheaper rate, maybe 3,000 or 4,000, or just put it into storage until I can get a bigger place and then try to start something up with it. But until then, it's just sitting there collecting dust. Now, with that being said, huge thank you to everyone for watching, especially if you made it all the way to the end. It really does mean a lot. I know this was a pretty long video compared to some of the other ones, but I want everybody to know exactly what they're getting into when it comes to purchasing a DTG printer, or at least the Ricoh Ri1000 in particular. Now, of course, this is not going to be everybody's experience. Some people are going to have better experiences than me. Some are going to have worse. Personally, like I said earlier, it's a good printer. It works. It gets the job done. But it's just a waste of money for me. Let me know what you think about this printer down in the comments below. Let me know what you think about DTG printers overall. Do you think they're worth it? Do you think they're a scam? Personally, I'm kind of starting to stray away from DTG printers because I think there are just so many better options out there that are a lot more affordable. But I want to hear from you, so just let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Again, huge thank you to everyone for watching, especially all the way to the end. My name is Mario with Neko Prints, and catch y'all next time. Peace.